All right, we are here again with our good friend Neil DeMause on the Thunder Arena Swindle 2 podcast show, whatever else it evolves into. Thanks so much for being with us again, Neil.
Happy to be here. I imagine this is going to be a long haul.
So, last time we talked, they had not put out their formal announcement about the vote and everything, and the thought was that they were going to stall a long, long time to keep from there being discussion and on and on and on. And so, a week ago, I get my phone starts blowing up. People are like, "Hey, it's out. They've released it." And it was kind of a this changes everything moment because it's so ludicrous. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you've had a look at it. And if you can just tell me your initial thoughts.
I mean, obviously the initial thought is that we're talking about what is it, 50 million from the team and several hundred million from the public. And a that's not the ratio that makes you look good, right? When you're saying, well, at least the team is putting in something. um, that's really not something that's going to win people over. And I think it's they've gotten dragged pretty heavily for that, and rightly so, because they haven't really even made an attempt to make it look like there's some sort of 50-50 deal, right? I mean, that's what you do more commonly. That's what we see the Rays are doing in Tampa Bay right now. Is like saying, oh, it's going to be a 50-50 split if you don't count all these other hidden tax breaks and land breaks and things like that are under the table. Um, so that's sort of what you expect more. The other piece that I really had to laugh at was this it's not going to increase taxes thing, right? Where the mayor is saying, well, because we had an old tax that's expiring, this is a new tax equal to the old tax, so it's really not a new tax. It's just the old tax, which like makes sense if you kind of don't think about it for even a second. It's a little bit like being told, hey, you can have a new car for free. We're going to charge you for it, but it's the same as the money you paid for your old car. So really, it's not any more money. Um, it's not the best PR move. I feel like Holt's initial press statement. And I don't think it's gone over that well, but we'll see. I mean, I guess he just had to get something out there, and they'll probably try and finesse the the optics of it as they go along. But we'll see what they can do.
It's certainly not a new thing. They did this last time, last Thunder Arena. They played the your taxes will not raise, which I'm saying now is PR for your taxes will remain raised, which is just the reality of it. And that kind of ties into. I found this shirt yesterday at the Goodwill. There's a lot going on here. There's so much going on, and just saying that makes me think about how the Thunder have not contributed a penny in state sales tax. That's another thing with regards to the taxation. The Quality Jobs Act, which you say the reason they want arena because they can't just say, "Hey, I want $500 million." The
Right.
team could not say we don't want to pay taxes. So the Quality Jobs Act says you get back 5% from your payroll. Well, the even worse thing is that now state taxes are not 5%, they're like 4.75. So they're paying negative state taxes. And it's just like it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean it's all obfuscation, right? It's all misdirection, right? Where it's about, we are going to throw so many different numbers at you that hopefully you will ignore the underlying thing, which is that we're asking you for like 700-800 million dollars. I keep going back to one of my favorite Odd Couple episodes, right, where Felix is running a casino night, and all of Oscar's gambling buddies go, and one of them wins all the money that Felix was hoping to raise for his opera club. And Felix comes back afterwards and is all depressed and sees Oscar sitting there counting money. He's like, "What you doing there with the money, Oscar?" And he's like, "Oh, that my buddy owed me money, so he paid me back." It's like, the money he got from me, that's my money. And Oscar sort of like, that's not, it's my money, Felix. He's like, no, 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 it's my money. He got it from me, and then you got it from him, and so I get it back from you. It's like an isosceles triangle. And I have referred a lot to the casino night fallacy, right? As where whether it's team owners or anybody who wants to build something enormous, Amazon headquarters, whatever, will say it's not really your tax money because it came somehow via some other way. Um, and it's amazing they continue to get away with this. But again, you don't have to have a good argument. You just have to have an argument that's good enough to make people sort of throw up their hands and say, okay, I don't understand all of this math and economics, but they're making arguments that it'll be great for the city. So sure, I guess maybe I'll vote yes. That's the hope that they're going
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to, I've been referring to a lot of literature and shows and all that, and just trying to find answers and ways to explain this because it's so nuanced and difficult to understand. And going back to The Big Short, there were several references on that last crash about how this everything they were doing was so complicated and complex, people just couldn't grasp it, and that's how they keep winning. And how do you simplify the message, or what? It's just it's wacky. Um, Another thing, so you saw in the release about the $600 million economic impact, and then in your article on Field of Schemes, your great website went back to that 2018. So I was wondering, was you saying 600 million a year, or is that how
for.
you interpreted it?
Yeah, how I understood it was they were talking about 600 million a year, and previously said, just 5 years ago said it was going to be 60 million a year, which is another number that is, pulled out of their butts. But it again, it doesn't matter what the numbers are, right?
Yeah,
They could be literally throwing darts at a board and saying, this is going to create thwack $20 billion.
yeah,
Um, it's just about getting some number out there in the public so that the claim gets repeated, right? So in every article, no matter how, even if it's skeptical, they have to then say, well, the Thunder say it'll create $600 million in economic impact, and you it doesn't have to have any meaning at all, but then it's balanced right against the actual economic studies, which show that there is going to be no or virtually no economic impact. And this is one of the big problems is that we have a journalism world where you have, if one side is lying and the other side is not, it's, well, we have a disagreement here, who can say?
yeah.
And there isn't the time or often the interest in trying to figure out who's right. It's just about sort of throwing out the competing claims. And at that point, yeah, sure. I mean, claim anything you want. Claim it's going to create $20 billion in impact and cause puppies to rain from the sky. And then it's like experts disagree on whether the sky puppy rain will actually come to pass.
Yeah. So a couple things that I want to go over on this. The thing that stood out initially and felt the blood rush to my face was, after this is the first paragraph in the release. After 14 months of public discussion and collaborative dialogue between Oklahoma City leaders and the leadership of the Thunder, a plan has been finalized to construct new downtown arena, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
So the public discussion, when I heard that, absolutely just infuriated me because there has been none. The city council members that he doesn't like say they haven't had a single discussion with the city manager, despite every month when they meet asking, no, no, maybe next month, maybe next month. There has been nothing in the public. There hasn't been a town hall. There hasn't been, and then like, I'm like, oh my God, is Holt really just flat out lying? And then I had a realization that maybe he's thinking about Twitter, about how he talks about with the people he doesn't block on Twitter. And he blocks a lot of people, which I think is illegal for a public official, but this is Oklahoma and it's still outlaw territory. But I really think that's where we are, is that they're so deluded, and so they believe that because Big Mike 38 said this is great on Twitter, then everyone agrees.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's again a very very common tactic is try to reduce the actual ability for actual public input, right? When the A's were first talking about moving to Las Vegas, they eventually had to have some public hearings because it got extended. But their initial plan was, we're going to have one public hearing, and it'll be on Memorial Day, and and then that'll be it. And there have been plenty of deals that have gone through with no public hearings.
And that was in
That all,
Oakland or Vegas?
that was in Vegas.
Vegas. Okay.
There are plenty that go through with no public discussion at all. Right now you have the 76ers getting a lot of heat because they keep holding these Zoom meetings for community feedback, but you can't see any of the community on it. You can only see the people from the Sixers. So, and they cherry pick which questions they're going to take. So there's no way of knowing who's even there or asking questions. Um, but again, you're always going to say, well, we've heard from the public, even if it just means, sure, people on Twitter, or a guy I ran into in the parking lot, or anything like that. It's like the old journalism trick of saying, you know many people are concerned, when really it just means that the person at the next desk said, hey, my aunt mentioned something.
Yeah. We're going to try really hard to put together some public discussion because they're not going to do it. And if they do, who knows what it's going to be like and who's going to be allowed to come. So this facility where we're taping this, we're going to try to have a big town hall meeting, get people together. There's so much that we can do, and we want to be an example for people to show that it's on us now, because our leaders are just are not there for us. And I wanted to talk about, we have the vote from the 9 council people on Tuesday. I thought there was hope that we could get 5 of them to just vote it down, but I spoke with one of the council people that I thought. Let me just briefly go over what he said when you made a decision. And he says, my decision, me making a decision to put this on the ballot, is the right decision. And then he goes on to say, it's only right for me to allow the people to decide. And that's council people on both sides of the political spectrum are both saying that they need to let the people decide. Well, the problem with that is in 2022, when Mayor Holt first announced about the arena and nobody knew he was going to do it at the big thing, he could have done it that year, but he did not, because that was a primary year and too many people would show up to vote. So we're doing it in December, where it'll probably be snowing and tornadoes and all this. And I mean, can you talk to that about, they are literally suppressing the vote?
Yeah.
And by voting no, the council people can maybe push it back to next year. And then we can vote on this during the primary and everyone can show up and decide.
Yeah, I mean, that's that. Obviously, if you're on a legislative body and you want to be in support of something, but you don't want to be on the hook for being in support of something, right? The best way to do it is to throw it to a vote of voters that will be more inclined to go your way, or that will be, at least where turnout will be down, where money can make a bigger difference, right? And I, I'm not surprised that they're trying to do that. I do think that at least there's an advantage that if you do have a vote, it's 3 months off, and there is time to have some public discussion, which again, is going to be difficult because there will be a lot of money on the other side, right? A lot of money trying to sway the vote. But at least gives you an opportunity. It's better than if the council could just go and vote it through right away, right, without having to go to a public vote in December. So, I think everything you're saying in terms of trying to raise visibility, in terms of trying to get people educated about this, in terms of getting people to know when they have to come out to vote and what the issues are, is important. And that 3 months is an important lead time to make sure that people are informed and go into this as educated voters.
Last time we talked, you told a story. I don't know the details, and I want you to go over it again just quickly,
Sure.
about some municipality where there was discussion about how to do this, and they're like, maybe we could do this, and then they mentioned a vote, and the guy's like, oh, that's great, we can do a vote, we can win a vote easy. What was
Oh
that
yeah,
again?
no, sure. That so this it was actually at a stadium builders conference in like 96, 97. I forget what the year was. And somebody had gotten up it was like a panel on public votes or something like that, and somebody had gotten up and said, we don't like doing referendums because you never know how the voters are. It's easy to convince legislators, but voters, who knows what they're going to do. And then this guy Jay Cross, who was working for the Miami Heat at the time and had worked for, went on to work for other teams as well, got up and said, "Well, we actually think differently. We like votes because we know how to win votes. You just spend money on, right?" And the Heat, in fact, had just gone through a referendum campaign for their new arena, which was replacing one that had been built only 8 years earlier, I want to say. And they not only had a huge push for the vote, but then when it looked like they were losing because it was a lot of public money that was going to go to the team, at the last second they changed it and said, okay, here's our new deal. Instead of you paying us to build the arena, build the arena and you pay us the exact same amount of tax money to run it. So the numbers didn't change at all, but suddenly it was, oh, we're going to build the arena. And it looked much better. And suddenly the ads that they were running with Pat Riley holding a basketball and talking about how great it was going to be for the Heat to have a new arena, there wasn't that talking point against it of saying, well, but why should we be the ones paying for it? And it passed. And to this day, the taxpayers are still paying the Heat to play there every year. So you know, they absolutely do have ways of doing this, and one of the problems is in our country it's really easy to win an election, especially an election on a ballot that's not going to have a lot of people turning out, and it's going to have can easily be swayed by getting a small number of people to the polls to vote the way you want to. Sure, there are definitely advantages that they have, but at least it's a fight where and they do lose. I mean, we just saw this in Tempe in Arizona, right, where the Coyotes were all set and we're like, okay, we're going to go to a vote and we're going to win this, and they got their heads handed to them. So I think the
When was
first
that
guy
vote?
is still right. You never know how the voters are going to vote, even if you spend a lot of money.
When was that Tempe vote?
That was in May of this year, I want to say.
Okay. I just think that if we shoot this down, it's not going to be just another defeat. I think, I've been here for so long, and I have such strong feelings for Oklahoma City. It's just different. This is a weird place. I mean, we brought down the country's economy in the '80s with the Penn Square Bank, and people barely know that story. I mean, it's just like
Mhm.
what happened in the housing bubble. There's so many. Actually, Dallas, the show was really about Oklahoma City, but they rebranded it kind of like they rebrand things with the Thunder because it sounds better. Who's going to watch a show called Oklahoma? But I just think the impact of a place like this beating this would be huge, and this has to end. I mean, because the harm it's caused. I always tell people last time when we did this, and David spoke with Holt about it 10 years ago. He said he had absolutely no idea why we would do this. He doesn't understand. But people are suffering since the last arena. 366 people controlled as much wealth as the bottom half of humanity last time. Now that number is between two and three. And that's just a small example of the incredible consolidation that's happening. They talk about not only will the Thunder come, but we'll get all these great concerts, but it's always some Max Martin industry plant, Katy Perry, someone in that tight little circle of expected mainstream. You remember in The Jerk when he's working at the thing and he's like, you can have anything between here and here.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what we're living the Jerk scene now. We get these small options of people that come to town. There was some country singer, Jelly Bean or Jelly Roll. I don't know. He's,
Mhm.
run by Viacom. We, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I keep hoping that I mean, obviously it'll be big. How this vote turns out is going to be big either way, right? Not just for the Thunder, but for how this game is played nationwide. But it's been the business model of the sports leagues for 30, 40 years now, and I think you know even if it will be a major battle, the war is going to keep raging. And but if you know Oklahoma City voters can start pushing back and say, okay, we don't actually want to give you $700-800 million. You're going to have to come to us with something that is a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah.
Then every skirmish, pushes the needle a little bit more and encourages people in other cities to say, oh, these guys said no. Maybe we should be doing that. But I don't expect that it's going to put an end to this stuff tomorrow, right? I mean, it's just there's way too much money at stake. But at some point, one hopes it has to start turning the tide to the point where maybe 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now, we'll be looking back at this time as, man, wasn't that a crazy time? Everybody was just handing over tax money to sports teams.
It'll be like me looking back at my high school picture with the butt cut. I'm like, what was I thinking?
When we first started researching the book, close to 30 years ago now, we certainly never thought that deep into the 21st century we would still be talking about this crap. We thought, wow, isn't this a weird 90s kind of thing to be happening? And apparently the 90s are just going to last forever.
Just one more thing. I believe so that I'm going to put the picture up post production
Yep.
of Mayor Holt and George Bush standing together because he used to work for the Bush campaign. He ran Bush's reelection in 2004. And I think it's amazing. George Bush started this, right? The Ranger Stadium. That was the first one, if I remember
No,
correctly.
no, George Bush came in right. George Bush, I mean, there have been a bunch of stadiums already by the time.
The Rangers Arena subsidy was not one of the first ones when he owned the Rangers.
It was in the first half, but it was certainly not the bellwether. He was following what other people were doing. My favorite George W. Bush story actually is that when the strike was going on, right, and before I guess the '94 strike, right. So when the team owners were trying to debate how to do revenue sharing because the rich team owners were saying we don't want to give any money to the Kansas City Royals, things like that, and the teams in the lower income teams in smaller markets were saying, well, we have to have this because we can't possibly compete with the Yankees otherwise, right? And eventually they ended up deciding, well, we'll settle this by just taking more money out of the players' hides and driving the players into striking. But before that, when they were still negotiating, they were up in some like camp in Wisconsin or something like that, and like the big market owners were in one tent and the set of tents, and the small market owners were in another set of tents, and the only guy they could find who could talk to both sides was George W. Bush. So he was like literally running back and forth between the tents, running messages. This is all in John Hellier's book, Lords of the Realm. And that was his role. He was the guy who could communicate with both the insanely rich owners and the less insanely rich owners.
Oh.
But
It's just fun that Bush was big in the stadium swindle deal, and his old buddy Holt are now, one of the mainstays in it. So I'm going to try to find an angle with that, and
oh, yeah, I mean, he definitely took advantage of it, right? I mean, he learned from both sides that he was talking to in those tents. That the one thing you got to do is make somebody else fund your problems, right? Don't be squabbling between the billionaires.
yeah.
Go to somebody else, take it out of somebody else's hide, whether it's taxpayers or players.
Well, any last words? Because we're going to be going Tuesday. I'm sure that 7 or 8 of them are going to vote to put it on the ballot, so it's going to happen. And I'm still planning on going and saying a few things. What words of wisdom can you give to those of us who are going to be giving citizen presentations? Or maybe,
I've watched and been to a lot of public hearings, and I know they're mostly dog and pony shows, but that doesn't mean that they're not an opportunity to try and actually have a voice and actually say something. It'll be interesting to see what happens. It's the start of the next 3 months, right?
well, wish us luck, and I thank you so much for coming back on. Appreciate your work. Everyone check out fieldofschemes.com and some of Neil's other great work. He's a great guy, and we thank you so much.